reading and looking at probably over the next couple of times that we meet, Job's response to his three friends was evidently very well thought through by him. And it is kind of a mixed way of writing things. Some of it is kind of written as a third person. And others is just kind of bits and pieces of things that he, Job, had learned and that he, Job, knew. Because his friends, supposedly, had taken the position that Job was not being honest and truthful, that he was a very sinful man, though they couldn't name a sin in Job's life. His three friends couldn't. And but they still said, the fact is, God is judging you. He's punishing you by taking your wealth and taking the lives of your children and taking the lives of your servants, and on and on and on. You're the problem, Job. You got to confess your sin, is the implication that they were trying to get him to see. And they just kept coming at him from different angles, as we've already seen. And Job knows what God has said, that he was the most righteous man in the East. He knows that he is a sinner, but no sin that is worthy of all the judgment that they said this was. And of course, from the very beginning, we learned that this was not judgment at all. This was a test. And the devil wanted to say, hey, you take away all of the blessings that you've given to Job, and he's going to curse you. And God said to the devil, you have certain limits. You can go no further than those limits. You can't take his life. But you can put him to the test. And of course, Job is passing the test. He did not curse God. He said he did not say anything against the Lord. He just didn't do that. And so here is the situation that he is faced with. His friends keep telling him he needs to get right with God. And Job is now setting forth things. He says, I'm just as smart as you are. We've already seen that the last time we met. I'm just as smart as you are. And he starts offering all the things that Job has learned through the years about God. Where and how he learned things about God, he touches upon. As we read this portion, beginning here in the 4th verse, as we read this and the things that are said, we kind of come away and scratch our head and say, what's this mean? And what's he saying? And what's he trying to produce before them? Well, Job is trying to show them that he knows a lot more about God than they think that they know. That's what he's trying to show them. All right. Having said that, we come to verse 4. Job is speaking. I am, this is Job, I am one mocked of his neighbor. Notice it's singular, a neighbor. A neighbor, singular. He's marked of one neighbor. Doesn't leave the name of the neighbor. We don't know who that neighbor is. No way of knowing or finding out at all about the neighbor. But he says that he is mocked, ridiculed, made fun of by the neighbor, who calleth upon God. Now, it's not the neighbor that is called upon God. It's Job who has called upon God, okay? Job has called upon God, and God, answered him, Job. And here's the answer that Job got. Did he get this by direct word of the Lord? It seems to be that that's what it's saying that he did. The just, upright man, which is Job, is laughed to scorn. That's it. That's all that God said. That's all that Job got from God on this issue to that point. And this is simply to show and phrase in such a way that the devil couldn't come back and say, okay, God, you went in and you helped him out. He just simply said what the facts were regarding Job. He was a man laughed at. And it was the neighbor that was the one that was doing the laughing. Unnamed. But all of this is to give some answer to Job in his quest for, why is all this bad stuff happening to me? You and I would ask the same things. Anybody would. Why would God let this happen? Why would God bring this to pass? Why? When you can't legitimately think of a single reason why God permitted this. So, he goes on in verse 5. He that is ready to slip with his feet. Job is speaking. The he here is Job. He's ready to slip with his feet. He's running out of options. He's running out of how to rationalize this. And it's a phrase that simply says he's not necessarily literally slipping. It's the let God know I'm in a position that I'm about ready to lose my footing. I just don't know how much more of this I can handle. All right? To slip with his feet is as a lamp despised. What in the world is he talking about? A lamp despised in relationship to his feet slipping. Well, the lamp suggests that this must be in the evening, maybe during the night after dark. And we all know that the most difficult time when you're going through hard times is in the evening and at night. You're tired. The weariness of the day is worn upon you. The challenges that you are facing that are a challenge to you and you're having a hard time with. And it's dark. Now, you got to remember, in those days, they did not have light like we do today. When you look at all the light that we have in our homes, in our businesses, even on the streets, it's amazing. But even that doesn't totally eliminate all darkness. So, when he says here, a lamp despised, he's talking about a lamp, a portable lamp that he has with him. It doesn't give enough light for him to see clearly where he's going and walking and possibly slipping and falling is the picture. But it is to speak of what's going on spiritually in his own heart and mind. He doesn't understand why God has brought all this upon him. He is willing, and we're going to see this, he is willing to let the will of God be done in his life. And that's a good thing that each one of us, we who know Jesus, is to put our trust, our confidence, our reliance, our commitment upon the Lord. He knows all. He is all powerful. And we're going to see things that Job learned, even though he had no Bible. But it becomes profound, the things that he could learn, simply from God's creation. And we will see that. All right? The lamp is despised because it's almost worthless. Why am I carrying it around anyway? All right? Almost worthless. In the thought of him that is at ease. Job wants to be at ease, and yet he has nothing to make his life at ease. No answers that he really wants. He wants to die because he doesn't have any other option, basically. He's got a disease that he can't get rid of. He's lost his children. He's lost his servants. He's lost his wealth. Oh, my word. He's even lost the respect of his wife. That's pretty tough when you look at it all. So Job is really in a tough place. He needs and wants to be at ease, but there doesn't seem to be any way for him to get to that place of ease. Verse 6 changes the thought a little bit. The tabernacles of robbers prosper. The tabernacle, singular, is a dwelling place, a tent, a building, a dwelling place. But primarily it's thought of as a tent, a tabernacle is. When the temple was built, they didn't call that the tabernacle, though it did exactly the same thing as was done with the tent. The tabernacle was done in the temple. The temple was permanent, quote unquote. The tabernacle was a tent that could be disassembled, travel, reassembled again, and so on. He's talking about the dwelling places of robbers prosper. From time to time, I think all of us have sometimes had a thought cross our mind, and we've thought about this. It seems that the wicked, the evil, the sinful prosper. It seems that they prosper, whereas we who are godly, everything's just kind of falling apart here, there, and yon. Why is that? Why is God letting that happen? Well, an oversimplified answer to this is this. God does not discipline those who are not his children. He judges them. He gives them the opportunity to live in this life. They can choose righteous living or they can choose unrighteous living. They can choose a relationship with him or they can ignore him. But he doesn't discipline or correct them like he disciplines or corrects his children, you and I who believe. And so he is looking at and seeing those who prosper. They're robbers. They're wealthy. They're doing well. Ill-gotten gain. And they, the robbers and others that provoke God, are secure. And we all have the times that we think this way. Well, probably what we ought to do is God's judgment should fall on them. But yet he withholds his judgment. There's also a part of God's grace that is there. God extends grace. And this is unmerited favor. Nobody merits God's grace. None of us. Job didn't merit God's grace. You and I don't merit God's grace. Nobody merits it. God does not owe us anything. The wicked don't merit. Godly people still don't merit it. Ultimately, God will fulfill his promises to his people. And the Bible is full of the glorious future promise for the believers. Fantastic what is going to be ours forever. Sin, wickedness, and evil, and everything associated with it in any and all ways will be gone forever. It will not even be so much as a memory, because that would be a black spot on the absolute perfection that God has got in store for all of his children. But in the meantime, there is a general grace that is extended to all people to varying degrees. And how people respond to those varying degrees of common grace will determine, in many cases, God's extending spatial grace to them. That spatial grace is the grace that actually brings you to the point of being saved. Your sins being paid for by Jesus, and your sins taken away, and you are his child forever. That's spatial grace. But, so he's looking at this and saying, the evil people, the robbers, they prosper, and they're secure. Nobody bothers them. Here's a modern day scenario. The biggest thing out there right now that every single one of us have to watch out for is summed up in one word: scams. There is no end to scamming. And new things are popping up all the time. New scams coming here and new scams coming there. And it comes and it comes. And after a while you look at all this and say, how do you know what's a scam and what isn't? They get very sophisticated. And then you ask the obvious question. Why aren't we, our government, our law enforcement, our Congress, our senators, why aren't we making laws, rules, and regulations against scamming? And why aren't we rounding these people up and prosecuting them? The most common answer: they all live out of the country and we can't get to them. That's not exactly true. There are some that do live out of the country. But there are many others who live right here, right under our noses. I have never heard of anybody being arrested and prosecuting for scams. Now, maybe some have, but I have not heard of them. It's not on the evening news. On the evening news or the morning news, you get the latest scam that was just discovered. Got to watch out for that one. Got to be very careful. Don't fall for it. But needless to say, that just kind of illustrates this whole thing about things that are seemingly out of control. He goes on and says, into whose hand God bringeth abundantly. God seems to be blessing them abundantly. Here's this person who robs and cheats people, living in a lap of luxury. Multi-million dollars they own and have and are part of their property. Wow. They're getting away with it. They're getting away with it. Well, it really does seem unfair, but that's what Job is showing them, the things that he's feeling, the things that he's expressing, the things that he is experiencing in his life. Verse 7. But ask now the beasts, talking about animals, oxen, horses, all kinds of animals, beasts, big ones. Ask now the beasts, and they shall teach you, and the fowls, birds of the air, and they shall tell you. Job has learned that God's creatures, as he has watched them as they live their lives, and how God takes care of them, and God meets their needs, and how everything, for the most part, goes their way. Yes, there's times that bad things happen to them. But he has learned that as a man, I've been through a great period in my life. Everything was going my way. And now some bad things have happened in my life. Very bad things. But God is still in the picture. He's come to that conclusion. All I have to do is look how God takes care of the animals. The birds, they fly south for the winter. They fly north for the summer. Yeah. It's so interesting to see how they function in this present world that is sinfully difficult on many occasions, and the things that we face and deal with as a result of that. All right? And they shall tell you. So he is telling his three friends, I have learned a lot. You could learn a lot by just looking at the animals and seeing what God does with them. He didn't have a Bible, which basically tells us, as we who have one, tells us that a sparrow, he knows every single sparrow that dies, where, when, and how. But he didn't have that Bible. But he learned by watching the animals and learning. Verse 8, or speak to the earth, and it shall teach you, and the fishes of the sea shall declare unto you. The earth. My, oh my. Job was out on the planet Earth, the same planet Earth, after the flood that you and I are on. The same oceans were there in Job's day, though he was several hundred years after the flood. Several hundred years after the flood. But he's learning. The people of the world knew that there was a flood. In fact, all cultures in the world have some kind of idea about a worldwide flood that happened hundreds, thousands of years ago. But where did they get this information from? Obviously, Noah and his 3 children and their wives. Things were spread around and passed around. But looking at the earth, he knew when the ark came to Noah did on mountain range of Ararat, he knew that the water was going down. But where was it going? At the height of the flood, the entire surface of the globe was underwater. If you had been in outer space and was circling the earth and looking at what was going on, all you would see is water. But the crust of the earth, God caused to break and crumble. Some pushed up, others sank down. And as this happened, all of the waters that had fallen and from the sky, actually above the atmosphere, had fallen. And the waters that were in great cells under the earth's surface, they all began to find their level. And that's what we see today. Fundamentally, the earth of today is the same as it was in Job's day. A lot was learned by that experience and the things that he knew on that. Speak to the earth, and it shall teach you. It was judgment. Judgment on the earth. When you look at the antediluvian world, which lasted from the days of Adam and Eve to the days of Methuselah, when you look at that period of time, as best as we can understand, somewhere between 1,500 and 2,500 years, that world was a different world than what you and I are living in. One of the things that we have learned is life is a lot shorter now than it was then. And when you read in the scriptures about those individuals in the antediluvian world where their ages were given, well, you look at it and say the average life expectancy was 930 years. Interestingly enough, that was Adam's life expectancy too, 930 years. Things were a lot different. You lived longer. Archaeologists have discovered some very interesting facts. How the Earth's surface has changed and the atmosphere that we have today is different from what they had in the days of the antediluvian world. That atmosphere was much more pure than the atmosphere today. What the scientists have actually discovered is petrified fallen trees. And they measured in those petrified trees the amount of oxygen that was contained within these trees that turned to stone was significantly greater than the purest oxygen today on planet Earth. We all breathe the air today. It's not the best air in the world. And in part, that has shortened our lives somewhat. But he is pointing out things that he has learned. Things that he has learned and things he is sharing with his quote-unquote 3 friends, to get them off his back. To quit, in fact, he'll come right out and tell him, quit pressuring me. Quit bothering me with this. I have nothing to confess. We need to look